Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. If you're new, please take a minute now to subscribe and follow my work at worldaffairsincontext.com. I would love to see you there. As the European Union is firmly set on a path to serve its military-industrial complex and to continue a range of fear-mongering campaigns, trying to assure its population that they will be attacked and therefore they need to prepare survival kits, the trend and the role of continued propaganda are far deeper than it might appear at a first glance. Just recently, Europe celebrated the end of history. Those were the words of Vladislav Maslenikov from the Russian Foreign Ministry. Of course, he was referring to End of History by Fukuyama. He echoed a growing sentiment that the European project, which was once perceived as a beacon of prosperity, democracy, and stability, is now facing one of its most serious internal crises in decades. A very unique, timely, and thought-provoking discussion titled "The Militarization of European Consciousness, an Enemy at the Gates as a Way to Unite Society" was held at the Valdai Club conference held in Moscow on April the 16th. The discussion focused on the radicalization of European society, which of course lies at the core of current European policies, many of them in any case. This radicalization takes place against the backdrop of the crisis in the European economy and the weakening of ties with the United States. In this video, based on the information shared during the Valdai expert discussion, we will explore the growing internal contradictions within the European Union and how the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the decline of industrial output in Europe, and the pressure of geopolitical rivalries are actually pushing the EU into a new, more militarized and ideologically radical chapter. Needless to say, Germany's Friedrich Merz doesn't quite hold back when it comes to his true agenda. Take a look, here's one of his recent videos.
Die Umstände, und darauf hat der Kollege Klingbeil hier gerade noch einmal hingewiesen, die Umstände werden vor allem von Putins Angriffskrieg gegen Europa bestimmt. Es ist nämlich ein Krieg gegen Europa und nicht nur ein Krieg gegen die territoriale Integrität der Ukraine.
During the Valdai discussion, experts pointed out that at the core of today's European problems lies the decision to cut economic ties with Russia, a move that, while politically symbolic, of course, has had real economic and social consequences. Sanctions on Russian energy and raw materials were meant to punish Moscow, but instead, they've contributed to Europe's deindustrialization, sending energy prices soaring and manufacturing into decline. What about ordinary citizens? Well, this has meant higher costs of living, wage stagnation, and a growing sense of frustration. Voters across the EU are now increasingly questioning why Brussels' geopolitical ambitions are being pursued at their expense, and that is a great question, and we need more people posing that very question. But instead of opening dialogue, political leaders in the EU, many of them, are actually avoiding the conversation. What's the result? Well, rising social unrest, political polarization, and a growing distrust in traditional institutions. These are quite dangerous trends that are very much reminiscent of those experienced almost 100 years ago in Europe. So against this backdrop, Europe is experiencing a wave of radicalization, not just on the fringes, but at the core of its political system. The ongoing war in Ukraine has amplified nationalist rhetoric and helped European elites justify a shift toward militarization, both in budgets and in public consciousness. Just think how dangerous of a precedent this is. The EU, once an economic integration project, is now turning into a security and defense bloc. Peace may be spoken of in theory, but in practice, the logic of war is driving politics. According to Anatol Levin, one of the Quincy Institute experts, while European leaders speak of a state of war with Russia, European societies are actually not prepared for collective sacrifice. They do not want it, they reject it. A true peace in Ukraine, he argues, would likely deflate this radical impulse. Interestingly enough, the Ukraine conflict has also shifted the balance of power within Europe. Eastern European countries, traditionally more hawkish on Russia, are actually gaining influence. This, in turn, is empowering Brussels and strengthening the role of the Western European military-industrial complex. The strategy seems clear, of course. Unite the EU under the banner of military preparedness, fear of Russia, and opposition to quote-unquote Russian agents. It is a playbook, of course, that we know very well. It's a playbook drawn straight from Cold War politics, updated to the modern media age. Look, we've been through this before. We should be in a position to learn more from our past mistakes, but rewriting history, something the West loves to do, prevents us from learning from our own mistakes, and therefore we repeat the same missteps over and over again. We never learn. The policies based on fear-mongering may be working for now, but at what cost to civil liberties, to economic progress, and democratic debate? As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, nowhere is this shift more visible than in Germany. Alexander Kamkin from the Primakov Institute outlined a troubling transformation, the rise of remilitarization, both materially and mentally in Europe. The very parties that once stood for pacifism and diplomacy are now among the most prominent advocates for military buildup and anti-Russia policies. And while the German far right still focuses on migration and social decay, it's the mainstream ruling coalition that's pursuing the most radical shift in foreign policy and national defense strategy. There's a degree of irony here too that I can't miss. Interestingly enough, as Kamkin puts it, the most aggressive stances against Russia are no longer coming from the far right, but from the center left. All of this is taking place while the Global South watches closely. They may not be commenting or sharing their opinion on these events, but the global majority is watching and learning from this. The EU's struggle to maintain cohesion, to maintain economic growth and democratic principles in the face of war is being noted, of course, and in many cases critiqued. Its inaction in the face of horrors committed in Palestine are noted too. The experts noted during the discussion that Europe fears appearing weak, and that might be true. This fear is also pushing Europe further into hardline policies and also further away from its founding ideals. The EU is drifting from being a soft power built on consensus toward a militarized bloc driven by fear and division. Now, the big question here is, what happens next? Where do we even go from here? Both Levin and Kamkin suggest that the EU is heading into a period of deep political transformation, shaped more by economic decline and internal contradictions than external enemies. But of course, they still need a monster to fight, to fuel that division, and to maintain their authority. And this is very, very dangerous. A compromise with Russia, they conclude, may eventually become not a choice, but a necessity. But until then, experts warned, expect more polarization, more militarization, and more pressure on Europe's fragile democratic center. The Valdai discussion was truly great. I really enjoyed it. I hope that you found this quick video interesting. If you did, make sure that you are subscribed to worldaffairsincontext.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Ring the bell to enable notifications so that you don't miss my future videos. And I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of your day.